Hi, my name is Aiden Westover, and this is my policy brief on climate change and my recommendation addressing the escalating economic and structural impacts climate-driven natural disasters in America. This image I also chose, it kind of shows the natural disasters and the climate change, which we'll get into later. So climate change is affecting these are causing these natural disasters. Ones I'm mainly going to talk about is the flooding and wildfires. So wildfires are driven by the heat increase, right? So the heat increase leads to forests burning and catching fire a lot easier, which in areas where there are people can be bad, right? And coastal cities for flooding. So the flooding is caused by glaciers melting from the extreme heat, and that causes ocean flooding, which can, affect coastal cities, which is kind of the biggest that's kind of the biggest group that is affected. And for areas that are more low income and can't really afford to recover from these, it can be costly, as we'll see here. So funding lags behind escalating disasters. Over $2.915 trillion in disaster damages over 45 years. NOAA also reports that rising temperatures are melting glaciers and rising sea levels, increasing flooding in coastal communities, as I just mentioned. Um, so proven solutions and limited funding. The organization I chose to talk about is FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. They kind of have mitigation projects that I think are very necessary, and I think we need to increase the funding of these. They include flood control systems, wildfire prevention, and storm resistant infrastructure. These mitigation programs will not prevent the storms, but help to find a way to where it's not so costly later, and where there's not as much recovery needed, because these storms are going to happen, but we need to find a way to lessen them and mitigate them with these projects. Climate change is costing America trillions, as I just mentioned with that number. Climate change is making natural disasters more frequent, more destructive, and more expensive every year. This year alone, there was about 27 that costed over $1 billion each, which is not a lot. The solution I have is a simple risk-based mandate. Congress should increase funding for FEMA's hazard mitigation grant program and require that at least 50% of grants are awarded based on objective disaster risk. So I'm proposing that we should increase funding by 50%, so that way we can, because how it is set up now is a percentage of the grants that are given to these mitigation programs, not only FEMA, but multiple government officials get to pick and choose on some of where that percentage where that money goes. So they're gonna say, okay, let's just say we give you $200. We're gonna say we want you to spend 80 of those dollars or 100 of those dollars on this one specific thing, right? So that kind of limits limits the organizations. Giving a 50% increase in grants will allow more room to play with. So now from 200 went to 300. So so it will give more room for these organizations to use when it comes to funding. Why prevention saves money. So this is a return on investment. For every $1 donated, it saves $6 in recovery costs, preventing billions of dollars in taxpayer losses. Protecting taxpayers and communities. This isn't just about protecting the environment, it's also about protecting taxpayers, right? Because we're spending a lot of money our taxes are increasing when we're spending a lot of money to help these cities and these places that are going through these natural disasters. Instead of spending billions rebuilding communities after disasters occur, we can invest beforehand and dramatically reduce future losses. This will protect homes, businesses, infrastructure, and local economies, and most importantly, people and families. So, as I mentioned, the 50% increase mitigation funding. My goal is to significantly scale federally funded mitigation projects, especially in vulnerable communities facing the higher disaster risks, right? So, like the coastal cities, the places where wildfires are more likely to happen, right? Core strategic proposals increase federal funding for FEMA's hazard mitigation grant program over the next 10 years and distribute at least AMGP funding completely based on objective disaster data instead of earmarks. Earmarks are what I was mentioning earlier of how the government officials get to pick and choose where some of that money goes. This ensures communities threatened by floods, wildfires, and hurricanes receive funding based on actual need, not political connections. So some counter arguments to this is too costly is mitigation and unnecessary expense. Some argue that expanding climate change mitigation costs too much, or that disaster recovery should remain the priority. While these concerns are understandable, the evidence suggests the opposite. A lot of counter arguments are people that believe in more the economic side of it. Investing early saves more. Prevention is one of the smartest investments taxpayers can make. Investing before disaster saves far more than rebuilding after. And then the ratio I mentioned earlier, doing nothing will almost certainly cost far more over time. And then the last slide, counter arguments, reality, too costly is mitigation and unnecessary expense. Some argue that expanding climate mitigation costs too much, or oh, sorry, I was just reading the same slide. Protecting our community and futures, save lives, protect vulnerable communities. Climate change is already affecting communities across the United States with these natural disasters and becoming more frequent. If we act now, we can protect vulnerable communities and save billions in dollars. Strengthening existing programs. We should strengthen the FEMA programs, but also others. This is just the one I wanted to focus on. And yeah, thank you for watching my video.